think it's bad.
Be St. Kitts strong and mask up.
I wear my mask to protect my beloved citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. I invite you to do so too.
Show your love for St. Kitts Nevis and wear a mask.
Keep St. Kitts strong and mask up when you step out.
I wear a face mask for all the nurses, doctors, and other medical workers who are on the front line.
Do the right thing and wear a mask.
Show the world that we are St. Kitts strong and wear a mask.
I wear a mask so that St. Kitts Nevis remains a safe and healthy destination for me, for you, and our visitors alike.
Say St. Kitts sweet. Me no know about you, but me love St. Kitts bad.
Welcome back to St. Kitts. The health and safety of both our residents and our visitors remains our #1 priority. Please ensure that you put on your face. Stay in your lane. Practice social distancing. Sanitize. Wash or sanitize your hands every 30 minutes. And follow established health and safety protocols on all island tours. Report COVID-19 symptoms to any government official or your hotel manager. You can call the Emergency Health Hotline at 311. We look forward to welcoming familiar faces and to introducing St. Kitts to those who may not have visited before.
The rebuilding of tourism starts with taking the vaccine.
I'm taking the vaccine for a healthy nation.
I for sure will be taking the vaccine.
I am taking the vaccine because it's the best way to get back into full swing. Stay safe.
I've taken the vaccine for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for me.
not think it's bad.
Be St. Kitts strong and mask up.
I wear my mask to protect my beloved citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis. I invite you to do so too.
Show your love for St. Kitts Nevis and wear a mask.
Keep St. Kitts strong and mask up when you step out.
I wear a face mask for all the nurses, doctors, and other medical workers who are on the front line.
Do the right thing and wear a mask.
Show the world that we are St. Kitts strong and wear a mask.
I wear a mask so that St. Kitts Nevis remains a safe and healthy destination for me, for you, and our visitors alike.
To think it's sweet. Me no know about you, but me not think it's bad.
Welcome back to St. Kitts. The health and safety of both our residents and our visitors remains our #1 priority. Please ensure that you put on your face. Stay in your lane. Practice social distancing. Sanitize. Wash or sanitize your hands every 30 minutes. And follow established health and safety protocols on all island tours. Report COVID-19 symptoms to any government official or your hotel manager. You can call the emergency health hotline at 311. We look forward to welcoming familiar faces and to introducing St. Kitts to those who may not have visited before.
The rebuilding of tourism starts with taking the vaccine.
I'm taking the vaccine for a healthy nation.
I for sure will be taking the vaccine.
I am taking the vaccine because it's the best way to get back into full swing. Stay safe.
I've taken the vaccine for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for me.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a special appreciation and thank you to all the stakeholders and members of the media who are attending the press conference this morning. also to those persons who are listening on ZIZ Radio or are streaming live on ZIZ and our Faces of St. Kitts Facebook platform. My name is Raquel Brown. I am the Chief Executive Officer for the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, and I will be the moderator for this morning's proceedings. The press conference this morning is one in many of press conferences that Minister Grant has been having with the general public as we continue to reopen cruise tourism and as we also seek to increase our stayover arrivals. This morning, Minister Grant will give an update on cruise tourism and in the direction that we are heading in terms of our calls and how he sees things progressing as we move forward with the official start of the cruise season, which is November 1 to April 30th for the official winter season for cruise. So at this time, I would like to welcome the Honorable Minister Lindsay Grant to the podium.
A pleasant good morning to all. Ms. Raquel Brown, CEO of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. Mr. Keithley Phillip, CEO of SCASPA. Mrs. Giselle Matthews, Chamber President. Kevin Hope, Executive Director of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Specially invited guests, members of the media, a very pleasant good morning. I first of all would like to thank you, the stakeholders, and the members of the media for joining us this morning at this press conference. On the 14th of October, I advised the media and the public that I would return with an update on the winter season for cruise. The cruise season typically begins on the 1st of October, but however, due to the impacts of the COVID-19, we have had a phased approach to the commencement of this season. Over the past 19 months, we as a destination, along with the rest of the world, have been severely challenged by the COVID-19 global pandemic. However, I do believe that we are on the cusp of turning the tide. My teams at the Ministry of Tourism and the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, we have worked tirelessly with the Ministry of Health, the COVID-19 Task Force, and our stakeholders to identify protocols and strategies for the safe and sustainable resumption of cruise. Since our first ship on July the 22nd, 2021, please note that to date, we have received 14 calls from the Seabourn Odyssey, bringing 1,396 passengers. We have had 2 calls from the Celebrity, bringing 2,623 passengers. We have had 2 calls from the World Navigator, bringing 113 passengers. And up to Monday, the 25th of October, 2021, we've had 1 call from the Viking Orion with 366 passengers on the anniversary of the Viking Star arrival on October the 25th, 2016. So thus far, we have had a total of 4,498 passengers. These figures are indicative of the reduced capacity with which the cruise lines are resuming, as they too, similar to us, are applying a phased approach to the resumption of the operations safely. Limited capacity on board the cruise vessels and with phased increases, vaccinated travelers, pre-boarding and onboard testing by cruise lines, and the implementation of health and safety protocols are really the key to mitigating the risk of the spread of the COVID-19. The priority is and continues to be the safety of our nationals, of our residents, and our visitors, while we create a balance between lives and livelihoods during this time. Our participation recently in two of the major trade shows for cruise industry, which will be Sea Trade in September and the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association held last week, have revealed that cruise is on the rebound, but with limitations, due of course to the regulations put in place by global governments and bodies such as the CDC. On Monday the 25th October, the CDC just announced a temporary extension of the framework for Conditional Sailing Order, CSO, for cruise ships through January the 15th, 2022. This temporary extension includes minor modifications and applies to all commercial, non-cargo, foreign flagged passengers carrying vessels currently operating or planning to operate out of the US, with capacity to carry at least 250 individuals and with an itinerary anticipating an overnight stay on board or a 24-hour stay on board for either passengers or crew. The United States, which is our main source of supply for cruise visitors, continues to implement safety measures to regulate the sector. But it must be noted that these regulations have over time become less restrictive, and cruise lines are now able to expand their operations with fully vaccinated passengers and crew, testing at the terminal, onboard testing, and quarantine and isolation procedures on board. In addition, in the very recent years, we have been able to increase our business with our European lines, and they are also resuming their cruise operations in the Caribbean, with home ports both in Europe and the Caribbean. The European lines are also sailing on the health and safety protocols that include fully vaccinated guests, testing prior to boarding, and onboard testing. So what is the way forward for us? Having identified the protocols that are harmonious throughout the region, that allow for synchronized itineraries, and have encouraged increased cruise visitation, our destination is poised to officially begin our 2021-2022 cruise season on Monday, the 1st of November, 2021. Our cruise line partners who have scheduled calls include Carnival Corporation, which includes P&O, AIDA, Holland America, Cunard, Carnival Cruise Lines, Princess, Seabourn, and Costa. The Royal Caribbean Group, which includes Royal Caribbean International, Celebrity, Silversea, Pulmator, and TUI. Viking Cruise Lines, MSC, Windstar, Crystal Cruises, and Star Clipper. In November, we have 18 ship days in November, which translates to 27 calls in November. In addition, I would like to note some key dates in November. For the first time since March the 13th, we will receive 3 ships at Porzante. We will receive 3 ships at Porzante on November the 16th and again on November the 23rd. On November the 4th, the 10th, the 17th, and the 19th, we will have 2 ships calling on Porzante. The Allure of the Seas, which is an Oasis class, is scheduled to arrive on November the 18th. So I don't have to tell you, things are looking up. November looks pretty good. In December, we are scheduled to receive 51 calls in December. 51 calls scheduled in December. At full capacity, we would have welcomed in November 71,775 passengers, and in December, 119,146 passengers in December. However, there is need for us to manage our expectations and to understand that this is a phased approach for the resumption by both the lines and our destination. Our cruise line partners have advised that they will be sailing between 40 to 60% of their capacity as part of their own rebuilding strategy as they continue to test their protocols and mitigate the risk of the spread of the COVID-19 on board. This is a very gradual process. And so with these increase in calls, we have also been working with the COVID-19 task force and the Ministry of Health to approve additional tours to improve the economic benefits to our local operators. There are 3 categories of tours that have been approved. Firstly, we have the independent tour operators who are dispatched by the facilities of the SKTA. There are 2 tours currently approved, the panoramic tour and the full island tour. Excuse me. Important to note, these tours will no longer be dispatched at set times at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., but will be dispatched based on the request of the guests. Very important, because there was a concern with the operators about having them just at 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Now the new position is that they can be dispatched on request at any time during the course of the day. Secondly, with the success of our calls to date, we have expanded our tour offerings as promised to include the independent online tour individuals. These tours are sold by the independent operators who advertise and sell their tours to cruise visitors via travel agents, their own websites, and social media platforms such as Facebook. And then the final category are the tours that are sold on board the cruise ships and are facilitated by local operators. The approval of tours in these 3 categories serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it affords our local operators, the layman as we say, a greater opportunity to earn. And secondly, it offers our visitors a greater variety of experiences through which they can engage the destination even during the pandemic. We understand the challenges experienced by our businesses within the sector over the past 19 months. And with the increased calls, the aim is to activate the multiplier effect and thus increase the spread of the dollar within our society. At this time, we continue the fully vaccinated, travel-approved bubble approach. But as we said, this is a phased approach. And I think we are almost getting to the point where we can soon see our destination very much open up. This is critical, the bubble, for the safety of our nationals, our residents, and our visitors. We continue to review the operations and build on our successes so that we can continue to lift restrictions where it is deemed safe to do so. I am very excited about the future, but I am also optimistically cautious as we still have the COVID-19 pandemic around. We are still in the era of the pandemic and the situation remains fluid. We have seen success over the past 3 months, but our continued success and our ability to reduce restrictions will require an all-of-society approach. As we stand on the verge of the official start of the cruise season, I continue to solicit the assistance of the general public, our taxi and our tour bus operators, to follow the protocols that have been put in place to mitigate the risk of the COVID-19 spread. The challenge for us today is to safely deliver an authentic and safe Kittitian experience to our visitors. I am of the firm belief that we are taking steps in the right direction. And as we progress, I will continue to keep the public informed and updated. And I thank you very much, and I'll now take questions from the media.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning to the panel. Glenn Barrett from SKN Newsline. Mr. Minister, you just mentioned that at some point, hopefully soon, you'll see the full reopening of the country to cruise tourism. What specifically would be the criteria that will allow cruise passengers to begin casually walking through Bastille and making use of all the other shopping facilities that are in downtown?
Thanks very much for that question. I don't want to step on the toes of the Ministry of Health and those who are in that area, but as I understand it, we are now at, I think, about 78% vaccination rate. My understanding is that once the vaccination rate reaches a particular level, once the cases have evened off, then we will take another look in terms of generally opening up the country so that we can have some state of normalcy again. I'm very optimistic that by the end of 2021, we will see some more changes and some more easing of restrictions than we see now. As you would recognize, we started with a 14-day quarantine. We came down to 9 days. We came down to 4 days. We're at 1 day now. So I think we're getting there. And I believe that further restrictions will come, I'm certain, within the next 30 days. As you would also recognize, we have opened up our capacity in terms of tours. Just about a month ago, we were at 1,900 and something. Now we're at 3,000 in terms of our capacity for tours. So there again, we're increasing. I think we just have left maybe the ATVs.
Yes, sir.
We have still to look at those.
And a few other tours.
And a few other tours. We've just, yesterday I think it is, gave the green light for the safaris, yes, which was a big issue. So we just gave the green light for the safaris. But just a caution that although we gave the green light for the safaris, we are saying for now, in a phased approach, they are only to go to travel-approved sites. Later on, when we look at our success in that area, we may then say they can go beyond the travel-approved sites. But we have opened up the safaris as of yesterday, but we are saying the safaris can only go right now to travel-approved sites. So we are getting there, slowly, but certainly surely.
Minister, if I could just please add to that also, about 2 weeks ago, we also had a meeting with tour operators, and we took many of their suggestions, And what that actually helped us to work with the task force to get the additional tours certified. There were some challenges at the time. For example, there were 1 or 2 cruise lines that were requiring antigen testing for tour operators that were operating tours. Since then, an update that has changed. They're no longer requiring for persons who are operating tours, which would be tour guides, drivers, anyone working in an attraction or at a site. They have now removed that. And because all of the persons working in our travel-approved excursion sites or tours are fully vaccinated, that requirement has been removed for St. Kitts. It will be applicable for other destinations, but not for us. So there will be no antigen testing required for any tour operator, taxi operator, attraction site, or excursion operator anymore.
Good morning, LaShawn Dixon, St. Kitts News Observer. My question is, the last time you had a press conference, you said some cruise lines wanted to implement some regulations as it relates to testing for taxi and tour operators. Can you indicate how those discussions has gone thus far?
Okay, that was just what I said previously, so maybe let me just try to explain again. Apologies. The antigen test was the requirement for a few cruise lines. They have now removed it because all of the tours, attractions, sites, taxi operators, tour operators, anyone working in a travel-approved site, including a beach club, they are fully vaccinated. So for St. Kitts, specifically, we are not being required by the cruise lines, the 2 or 3 of them that were requiring that. They're no longer going to handle that or require that of us. Other destinations, because they don't necessarily have fully vaccinated persons necessarily, but for St. Kitts, it is not required. So I just hope I answered it was clearer this time. Thank you.
Going back from SKN Newsline again, the issue with Porzante, I understand that many of the, let me not say many, but some of the store operators had a situation where their employees were not vaccinated. Has that changed? Has the bubble been expanded at Porzante?
Well, I don't know. Well, the bubble has not been expanded insofar, meaning that we have the Porzante fenced, and that's the bubble. We have not eased the restrictions on stores. What we have said is that all the stores must have all the workers vaccinated on a ship day, so that if a ship comes in, any store at Porzante operating must be operating with all persons who are fully vaccinated. That is not to say that the store cannot have persons who are not vaccinated, just to say that on that particular day, those individuals are not allowed to work.
Good morning, Jeremy Abel, SKN Vibes. One question. Seeing that we had limited number of visitors to the island so far for the season, just about 4,500, what is our capacity to deal with the large influx that we're expecting for both November and December, in light of the fact that we haven't had this, I don't want to say mad rush, but this large capacity of people coming off the ships expected for these 2 months?
Capacities, as Minister said right now, are basically dependent on, one, the capacity of the ships. So, for example, Minister referenced in his update that ships are really only coming in at 40 to 60%. What determines right now a ship or ships coming into St. Kitts is the number of tours. We have, as of Monday, when we did our last update, we had 3,100 tours approved, which was previously at about 1,900 tours. So what we're doing is increasing the product offering and the availability of our independent taxi operators, our tour operators, and our ShoreX, which are the tour operators for the cruise line. What we have at this point in time may not meet the needs, we will agree, of some of our brands in terms of the type of tours, because of the clientele, the demographic they have, or what they like to do. We do agree. So we're constantly working with the task force, and we do know by the latest, probably even before Friday, we will have additional tours added to this 3,100 that we have. What I would like to say is that they're independent, pre-booked operators who are online, and I think it's been about 4 weeks we've been reaching out to them, asking for information about their tours. We met with them 2 weeks ago. We have a few tours that are approved to go for next week. We do have to work with the task force and work with the tour operators. So we're asking them, as they have been doing, to come into the office if they're unable to download the information that we've sent electronically. We do need the information on the type of tours, because the setup is not what it used to be. You're going to have to be organized, meaning you will have to, by 3 p.m., advise the St. Kitts Tourism Authority of your tours. You will have to provide a list, meaning the names of the persons. That information is critical. You will not be allowed to come in for an indefinite amount of time to pick up your guests. So if you have specifically a tour at 9 o'clock, we're not going to be allowing persons to be in there, because we can't allow for too much congregation, because we still have to observe social distancing. So what we're going to be doing is that there's going to be a time frame, which is about 15 minutes before the tour. We will have the names of the persons. We have a desk for the Tourism Authority for pre-booked already versus dispatching. We will have the names. There's a seating area, and the tour operator comes in and collects their guests, and then they go out. It will not be previously where they were in, and maybe there was, I would hate to say this term, but I'll be fair, there may have been soliciting. We're only picking up persons that we know that you have confirmed tours for. That's the agreement and the understanding. We have to account for persons leaving the arrivals hall, the Tourism Authority, just as ShoreX do. The St. Kitts Tourism Authority has taken on that liability for independent tour operators, unlike ShoreX, who have a certain level of insurance. So the St. Kitts Tourism Authority is working with cruise lines to say, we are responsible for pre-booked online, and we will have a list, we will know where they're going, and that's that accountability. We're no longer in pre-COVID times. We're not trying to limit anyone, but I think at the end of the day, we've had very successful calls. And the reason why I've had successful calls, even though I know some of the measures have been very frustrating, persons have felt restricted, limited, they have actually led us to where we are, to having 22 calls for November and an Oasis class ship, because St. Kitts is able to demonstrate health and safety measures. And there are other destinations that are still grappling with trying to find a balance with their increasing numbers, which are significant. They don't have a high vaccination rate, and they're also trying to balance how do they manage crews. So I'm just saying that yes, we cannot fully, we're not in your shoes every day. We're trying to find the balance. It is very difficult, but please work with us to make November and then December a success so we can look forward to January, February. And I will say this, with what else is happening throughout the world and the Caribbean still being a destination that is #1 for cruise, and we're still with the highest, one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, it allows us and even St. Kitts and other destinations to be more competitive and marketable, to have more cruises for the summer. So I'm just saying, please work with us. We're not trying to prevent anybody from earning their living, but we're working with a system where there's COVID, and today we have not had one reported case related to cruise so far with community spread. And I think that is what we should be proud of. Thank you.
Following up on some of the other questions, could you provide a sort of insight into what is likely to happen in terms of the numbers of cruise ships visiting St. Kitts and Nevis between January to March? I believe by now some sort of negotiations or discussions should have been going on. Secondly, I know it is a very competitive industry and competitive within the Caribbean itself, but has there been any kind of collaboration going on between the OECS countries in particular to ensure that cruise lines pay more attention to our countries, make our destination, make the Caribbean destination much more attractive for them than, let's say, the Mediterranean for that matter, or some other competitive space? And then thirdly, at this point in time, can you just reflect on what is happening on the land side of tourism, travel and hotels? What is happening in terms of their capacity that's available, marketing, and air transport? Thanks.
Thank you for those questions. I will direct the question about land-based tourism to the CEO.
You want me to go first, sir? You'll go first.
Yes.
I'm not stumbling for words. I'm just trying to we're positively optimistic. Our room stock is one still of not where it was pre-COVID. I think that is what we need to be realistic about. Before COVID, we had around 1,800 rooms in the Federation. And when I say room stock, I'm not just including our hotels, I'm relating to all tourist accommodation. So hotels, bed and breakfasts, condos, villas, apartments. And for that reason, with COVID, many of these and our larger hotels, we've seen what has happened. With that in mind, going into the winter season, unfortunately, we're not as competitive as where we should be. For example, we are still awaiting Timothy Beach, for example, and Awali, which maybe the public doesn't know, but for our marketing and for the demographic that we speak to for the UK market specifically, we are working with the properties to have them certified. But if we're going to be honest, we are in November, and if persons that would have come to St. Kitts and the Caribbean, they already have made their plans for Christmas. So at this point in time, not having had those hotels in our room stock from around August, September has affected the destination. I would like us to look forward, though, to 2022. And the reason why I say that is St. Kitts is poised with most of our hotels being open. I look to that optimistically because they will be able to meet the minimum requirements for 24-hour quarantine. And if we get to the point between now and sometime in Q1 of 2022 when there will be no quarantine, it makes it more favorable. The 24-hour quarantine, how it helps us is that the demographic that we speak to, as Minister said, we're somewhere around, 78% persons are first shot and almost 70% second shot. The demographic that we speak to are fully vaccinated. Our requirement is that you must be fully vaccinated. They are looking to go to places that are safe and have relatively good information available as it speaks to travel requirements. If you go on our website, for example, which most persons go to if they're looking for a vacation, that's where they're directed to. Our travel requirements are there and have been there since March last year, as we have updates on press releases and information on the destination. It is there. The 24-hour requirement information is there, and as of yesterday, we are including the vaccination rate, because I attended a seminar and I've realized that that is a very key point for our main source markets, which is the UK, Canada, and the US. In our demographic, 84% of persons in all source markets are looking to travel internationally next year. And so we are more poised to reach them as we start our marketing for Q4. So if I'm going to be as truthful as I can, it is our situation for Q4 is not as bright as we would like it to be for the winter season, the first part of the winter season, but I do believe with the traction that we will pick up in the next couple of months, November and December, persons planning for Q1 and early spring, we're more favorable to do better for those months.
And if I can answer you, the question that you posed, if there has been any collaboration as such between the OECS, etc., to make our destinations more attractive and pay more attention to it, you would, well, the simple answer is no. But you would also recognize that this industry is very competitive. We believe it or not, we compete with our neighbors next door. For the dollar at the end of the day. So it is incumbent upon us to make our destination as attractive as possible. I should say to you that within the region, we are on the top of our game. As you know, we have just built a brand new facility at Porzante. We have, I believe, some very unique tours in St. Kitts and Nevis, which are not being able to be duplicated outside. We have an independent tour operators here who are very innovative and who produce a really good product. And so because of that, we also attract the cruise lines. And so I think that we just have to make sure that we tweak our product and our experiences to make sure that the lines keep coming. I would say to you, when the cruise lines do their analysis on every tour, in terms of the guest experience, we always rank very highly in our guest experience. And that is one of the things we drill down on when we are in front of the cruise lines. What is the guest experience like for St. Kitts and Nevis? Because it is because of the guest experience why the ships would come back. The ships are not just coming for coming's sake. They're coming because their customers, their clients, their guests are getting a good experience, telling them about it, and so they're, it's word of mouth, and they put on more calls for that matter. So in that area, I think we are doing very well. In terms of the outlook, you asked for January to March of 2022. We're in a very fluid situation. Things keep changing. I might tell you something today, and then it changes. Well, as a matter of fact, I might tell you something this morning, and by the time we get to our office at 1 o'clock, it's changing us. That's how fluid it is right now. Normally we'll have a booklet already prepared to tell you what's happening for the whole season. We have not been able to do that because it's so fluid. We don't want to put information out there that is, at the end of the day, very, very misleading. And so we try to keep it, on the down low. We have told you today, however, that we're getting 27 calls for November. We've told you we're getting 51 for December. I am hoping that any change will be a change upward rather than downward. However, having said that, for January to March, we have slated in January 32 calls, in February 31 calls, and in March 31 calls. But as I said, that can change over time depending on the fluidity of the itineraries at the moment. We're hoping that we get more, but we are thankful and grateful for that, because just 2 months ago we weren't getting any. And now we're here that we're getting 2 ships in the harbor and sometimes 3 on any particular day, which is for us a fantastic start to the season. And we hope that as a consequence of that, we have more taxi drivers and tour operators being able to access the economic activity that will come as a consequence of that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tyrone Richardson from the St. Kitts Taxi Association, President. One question I'd like to ask concerning on a 3-ship day, how are you going to deal with the passengers on the gangway from different ships? That's what I'd like to know.
Passengers on the gangway?
Yeah, from the different ships, with the social distancing.
See you. Very good question. And that is why, in terms of tours, they're no longer asked for persons for pre-booked ShoreX tours. Those are done and they're lined up inside the cruise ship in their amphitheater or in a specific seating area. So when they actually are walking off, they're walking straight towards the area for loading in the tourism authority and to go onto the buses. That is why we're asking for the times from our tour operators, independents, because if we see, for example, there are, in the past, it didn't matter when tours were loading because there was just free flow. But if we see a situation where there's potential bottleneck, then we'll speak to respective tour operators to see if we can make an adjustment. Everyone is to wear a mask. No one is not allowed to wear a mask when they are on the gangway. Persons are not bundling up as what we've seen so far. And each tour operator for ShoreX, when persons are coming off, they have a tour guide. So they're walking with them. That is why it is so important for us with dealing with our independent taxi operators. For the independent pre-booked online, whatever the mechanism, we work with you to have this information so we can have it organized. So like, for example, next week, there are some who have tours and we don't see an issue. But if persons just come today, or they come on the day of the tour and say they have 3. That's not the process. We have a process where there's information that we need. We need the information of who is coming on the tour and where the tour is going, because even though we say travel approved sites, we have still found where we're getting submissions for persons to do tours at sites that are not travel approved. And so they may be saying, well, that's not fair. We're like, no, but that cannot be, because the task force is still in the process of approving sites. So yes, it's a concern, but that is why we're ensuring everybody wears masks and all the non-pharmaceutical measures are being practiced. It is so important. Yes, we know that vaccination does not prevent COVID, but we realize that in having this travel approved vaccinated bubble, it allows for us to be safer than in other locations where we could have possible mixing. I hope I answered the question.
And I appreciate the question too, because it's a good problem to have. Because a month ago, we were seeing a ship at Carambola, Seabourn, and no action down here, so no activity. So if you're saying that you're concerned about how we're going to deal with the traffic, I prefer that concern rather than you saying that you see nobody walking off of the ship. So I'm grateful for that concern, and we take it on board. And of course, we'll manage it the best we can to mitigate the risks, because at the end of the day, we're trying to mitigate risk.
Good morning again. A couple of questions. If you guys can go into details for me on these specific questions. When comparing St. Kitts and Nevis, the current restrictions with some of the other territories around the region offering the same product, can you guys give us a sense of the impact some of the restrictions currently in place in St. Kitts and Nevis is actually having on the tourism product when we look at maybe Antigua, Jamaica, Barbados, and some of the loosened restrictions that they have there? Additionally, can you speak to whether or not any interaction was had with the business community, even though they may not directly, as much as the tour and taxi operators benefit from tourists, they benefit to an extent. Was there any interaction with those individuals? And the final question has to do with, can you just give us a feedback in terms of whether or not the cruise lines would have spoken about the restrictions in terms of the fencing and all of that, and would you guys have also had any feedback from the visitors concerning that specific measure? And additionally, with the COVID-19 numbers, you know, it's kind of it's very low, basically. How long would that specific restriction remain on Porzante?
Oh, Minister is giving me that look. I'm going to answer the question as it relates to competitiveness, sir. That's okay, and I'll have Minister answer the others. As it speaks to cruise, when we started our discussions from as early as January, if I'm going to be fair, we were the only destination that was seeing fully bubble vaccinated tours. And we got a lot of pushback, both here and from not so much the cruise lines, but other destinations were asking how we could achieve that. And if we all look at our Prescribed Areas Act and how tours, tour operators, taxi operators, and prescribed areas are managed under the Act, that is what gives St. Kitts Tourism Authority, through the Minister of Tourism, that regulatory ability to do that. We've not tried to impede anyone's personal rights. However, we were really plagued with a dynamic of how are we going to get cruise back. And we continued to have our meetings with our cruise lines. And we were one of only, up to probably about April, we were seeing bubble vaccinated tours. It has been a challenge, as you know, for cruise, because we were still with PCR through to about mid-August. And so that is why we saw other destinations getting ships before us for fully vaccinated travelers. And this is because there have been so many shifts in terms of the protocols with the CDC over in the first 6-7 months for cruise tourism. Where we sit right now, it was actually quite interesting when we went to Sea Trade and we met with quite a few cruise lines, because we had one cruise line say to us, your protocols are much easier than ours. And we all looked on each other and go, what? Oh, yeah, but don't you need to change anything? That was kind of like a reassurance that we were doing well. And I think, if I can remember, it was Minister, myself, the CEO of Ascaspa, Mrs. Marshall in the room, and we all kind of had an aha moment, because it's been such a difficult time trying to make things work, and you have different brands, different target markets. So for cruise, I think for us, the challenge, and I don't say challenge, I think it's moving ahead, is getting more tours. We're meeting the requirements, and we've had the requirements out for quite a while. We're not trying to impede, we're just trying to make sure that if something happens, God forbid, we're able to address it and deal with it, as St. Kitts and Nevis have been doing since the start of our opening of our borders for cruise and for stayover. As it speaks to stayover competitiveness, we don't compete with the likes of Jamaica, Bahamas, Dominican Republic. We are not a mass market destination. We are destination that's based on lifestyle, and our niche markets are specifically, yes, lifestyle, leisure, and then we go into golf, yes, we go into culture and heritage, romance, yachting. It's been very difficult for us when we look at our competitors such as Antigua, St. Lucia, and Barbados, because while they have had lower vaccination rates, their restrictions we have seen have come and have been easing to make them more competitive. So yes, it's not been easy, but we do now have in our backyard and in our competitive set for the first time, Anguilla and Dominica. And you may say, why? Well, they now have a direct flight from Miami, courtesy of American Airlines. And Anguilla has quite an array of tourism hotel product that fits into our price point of the demographic that comes to St. Kitts. And Dominica most recently opened the Kempinski, well, last year pre-COVID. And with that flight coming from Miami, they're now in our competitive set. So competition is good, because I believe it allows us to fine-tune and look where we're going. They have had lesser restrictions going into Q4, so yes, they will have a head start, but as I said, going into Q1, I think we're better armed. We know that our marketing campaigns are speaking to our demographic, to persons who want to travel to St. Kitts. The restrictions are looser now or have been reduced. So unfortunately, we just have to wait for Q1 to start picking up that serious momentum.
Thank you, CEO. I think your last question, if I understood it correctly, you wanted to know what's the timeline more or less for removing the restriction at Porzante. That's the fencing you were speaking about? Okay, thank you. That's a question that I can't specifically say, but I'm very optimistic that by the end of the year, we will have that fence down. I'm optimistic in that regard. But I can't say a timeline now, because the decision is a decision that has to be made between the Ministry of Health, the task force, and of course, tourism. We are not there as yet, but we are almost there. That's what I can say to you. In terms of the feedback from the cruise lines, etc., they welcome it. They welcome it because, in fact, what the CEO said, I don't know if you understood it specifically, but the cruise lines did not want us to have the independent tours. Yeah? And the reason why they didn't want us to have independent tours is because they were saying that they were taking on the liability of their passengers in going on their tours, so that if anything happened untoward, God forbid, that their insurance would have kicked in. And they weren't satisfied that the independents as they are, doing their own tours with their passengers, if something went wrong there, could have taken up that liability. And that is why we as a tourism authority and the Ministry of Tourism said to them, look, we will take that liability if anything happens. And we did that because we wanted to ensure that the independents were in the game and were able to have a part of the business. So that is why we are hoping that the independents, when they go out with the passengers, which is going to be an honor system now because we can't police you, it's going to be the honor system. And we want to ensure that in the honor system, they don't breach the protocols. Because if anything happens because of a breach of protocol, we are liable in terms of finding money for anything that's happened. So, you know, we are hoping that the taxi operators and the tour operators and the taxi drivers take the honor system seriously. And at the end of the day, everything goes smoothly. As the CEO said, we have not had one issue to date. We want to maintain that and continue that, because the more we will maintain that, the more confidence the cruise lines have in us, the more confidence they have in the destination to bring more ships, which is ultimately what we want at the end of the day. Yeah.
Hi, good day, everyone.
Good day.
Minister Grant, so thank you for inviting the St. Kitts Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce to this press conference. And thank you for your recent and current update on the industry and where we are and where we hope to be going. I believe it's critical that I must say the importance of public and private sector working together. I think we've seen some benefits from that. And I know we've had a lot of debates and maybe don't agree on everything, but I think at the end of the day, we came to a point where we're seeing this reopening, and we are very pleased in the private sector and the chamber to see the gradual reopening taking place. And very happy to hear when you mentioned about the private online vendors. Many are micro and small businesses, and so their survival is critical. And now allowing them to have those tours being booked online is their survival, really. And we can't afford to lose micro and small businesses in this small economy. They're the ones who will be growing eventually to larger corporations, to medium-sized businesses, and creating employment. And so I hope, I know many, and I know some, I shouldn't say many, but I know some who are struggling to reopen because of the situation for the last 18, 19 months, where all their savings have gone. And so loans to reopen and get operational again is a challenge. I'm hoping the Ministry of Tourism might be able to assist in any form to push some of those applicants who have put in applications so that they can get their businesses back up and running for the cruise sector in particular. I wanted to ask a question. You had some very good questions from the press, which make us think a lot. And I know it's not easy in making decisions in reopening a country. I just traveled, and it was a very good experience for me to see that the world is turning. They are moving. They are doing everything, but everything with protocols, as Raquel said. So there's a world out there that's completely busy. People are traveling. Everyone is in a mask. They're trying to exercise social distancing and sanitizing. Vaccination is key. The chamber continues to advocate for vaccination. I know it's a hot topic, but without it, we cannot function. And I think it's simple. And when you travel, you see that also. They make your life very difficult if you're not vaccinated overseas. You can't sit in a restaurant and eat in Canada. You must show your vaccination passport. Then you sit at the table. So these are the realities of the world. And when you sit at the table, you click on a health app, and you put your name, your contact information in, and then you get your menu. You don't get the menu until you do that, because they can contact trace you in the event that there is some sort of spread or case contact. The Ministry of Health has that immediately. Just to give a bit of what's happening out there in the world as we continue in this pandemic. But I have a question that is of a concern, and it really relates to the stayover passenger. I know we're focused on cruise, which is our mass market, but the concern I think the private sector has is that, or a question really, I'm not sure there's any answer on this at the moment, but considering the value that stayover passengers bring to our destination, somewhere in the region of $2,200 US per head, translating, I think, in 2019 to $500 million. I think those are some numbers in their stayover value to us. And the balance of our cruise sector, which also brings in about similar figures in terms of revenue to our country. We have to find a balance between, managing multiple ships in port as we open up, and still creating a fair balance between our stayover passengers' experience of the destination, making it as fulfilling as it is for the cruise sector. In the sense that if you're closed off in bubble tours and you don't have accessibility and you're staying in one of the hotels and you have a busy cruise day or days. I think you said next week we're going to have maybe something like 4, is it? 4 calls? 3 or 4. The guests who are staying in the hotels, who flew in on, say, today, Wednesday, and only have a week or 5 days, they can't move. Current restrictions. They cannot go on those travel-approved tours on those days that they're at that hotel. The taxi drivers will be sitting waiting and also wanting to take them out. And the experience of coming to a small island in the Caribbean is to see the island, is to meet the people, is to interact. Most people who choose the Caribbean choose it because they like the people and they want to see more, they want to learn more, they want to get out there. And we want them, let's face it, we need the US foreign currency. How do we manage that? What is the plan going forward to protect those guests in the hotels, give them an equally fulfilling experience of our destination, and allowing all the vendors, the taxis, and everyone to benefit from the value per head spend that they bring to our destination? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that question. It's something that we have been grappling with, so I'll let the CEO answer that.
I think the vaccination rate, this is something that will be approved by the task force, but I do believe that time is coming down with the 24-hour quarantine and tours in terms of, because they're fully vaccinated and cruise operators are fully vaccinated, cruise passengers are fully vaccinated, so they're going from a vaccinated site to another vaccinated site. I think the one question though we do have, which is not on the cruise side, it is on the hotel side, where there is more risk of picking up COVID from asymptomatic carrier, because not all hotels still have fully vaccinated staff, whereas in travel approved tours, because they are bubble vaccinated, so the risk is of having a stayover visitor interact with cruise passenger and going back to the cruise ship. That is where that concern is. It doesn't mean that it can't be looked, but if we want to look at the highest risk now is really with stayover. It's actually not with cruise, because of the testing that's being done frequently, the contact tracing, and all of what has been put in to make cruise a success to date for the cruise industry globally. So really the pressure is on our stayover, and I think stayover worldwide in terms of the testing, the checks, the balances, and the protocols. But it is something that we know for us to be successful. It affects groups, which is meetings and incentives also. It's not just the leisure traveler. And it is something that we have to rectify, and we're trying to rectify for November, because it actually will help with the marketing of the destination come January when it's freezing and there are persons who want to go somewhere. St. Kitts is very high in their consideration set. We are like in the top 5, depending on in our competitive set. So I think we need to be able to turn that dial, and we saw as early as April when we had our promotion. It's really just the travel requirements and the ease of what they can do. They don't have a problem with the price point. And I want to be clear, the price point for St. Kitts is, I'm not saying that persons just want to waste money. I'm saying that is not coming up in the consideration set from research that is being done by independent places such as Travel Zoo and STR. It is coming up that they want to have ease of restrictions for themselves who are fully vaccinated, and ease of things to do. So we do agree with you. We know it's at the top of the list now for stayover. Stayover and cruise in St. Kitts, unlike other destinations, I just want to say they play the same role with the price point. For St. Kitts, the spend for a stayover visitor is $155. For cruise visitor, it's $135, and this is US dollars. So on both ends, they contribute significantly, and I don't want hoteliers or for stayover hotels or persons who benefit from stay over directly to think that we're not looking to ease it. It's just that at this point, cruise moves the number faster, and we know that we have achieved a certain goal for November and December for cruise, and now we're going to work with the task force to see what we can do for after the 24 hours. How can we get the tours integrated for our visitors?
Mervyn Thompson, ZIZ. I have two questions. One kind of surrounding what was just said, because I know we're here to discuss cruise, but can you also run us the figures for travel by air and what we expect for the remainder of the year, and also what excursions or what can they do when the visitors, the stayover visitors, when they're here. Secondly, the GHTA, that is the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association, they recently announced an insurance plan which includes health and life policies for workers of the industry and their families. Is that something that can be considered here, considering we are in a health crisis?
Thank you very much for those questions. I'll answer the second question and I'll leave the first to the CEO. I'll be honest with you, we have not put that up for consideration, but now that you've raised it, it is something that we can look at to see how best or if we can address that issue at all. So thanks for raising it, but we haven't looked at it in any specific way as yet. In terms of the first question, I'd let the CEO answer that.
Unfortunately, I can't give you the direct number of passengers in terms of coming into the Federation at this time for stayover. And the reason is because it's a little bit skewed. We have persons returning who are a lot of visiting friends and family. They're no longer staying in hotels. So the hotels, because we have the 24-hour quarantine, so our hotels now are slowly dependent on leisure travel, which is what their main goal is. However, we're not seeing the bookings. I can really tell you, and I'm not going to give you an exact number, but the average occupancy going right now into the winter season for October and November, it's below 50%, so it's not good. And that is not where we have been. For other destinations, there are around 55, 60 that are in our competitive set. If you're looking at destinations that are mass market, we can't compete because those destinations have over 20,000 rooms and they have price points as low as $30 a night, and that's not our price point. And their airfare is $199, 3 days round trip. So we're working through the process of bringing on more online, more tourist accommodation. It is working with the task force, and we're really trying to achieve that, hopefully, by the end of November.
Tyrone Richardson once again. I'm very pleased to hear that we have 3 ships on a given day, but there's also a concern about the second pier. I'm made to understand that there's some dredging should be taking place. I don't know how true it is. I just want some light on that. Thank you.
Mr. Taxi President, you look like you're in the media rather than in the taxi business. But an excellent question. I will answer it in this way. In any business, there are challenges, and we've had our fill of challenges with the overall second pier. Yeah. But what I can tell you, and why I'm glad you raised it, is because we as a destination, we have to deal with it and what has confronted us. We are not satisfied that the pier as it is now can satisfy the needs that we wanted to satisfy. Yeah? And so just yesterday, I would have been able to get my cabinet colleagues to support me in terms of doing the necessary works to put it in a position that we said that we would be able to do, and that is have 3 Oasis class ships in Porzante at any given time. Yeah? The real issue is, well, next week you should see some work beginning, some concrete works beginning, which will be able to join the second pier and the first pier in terms of the walkway smoothly. So that will be done next week. We're expecting it to finish within 2 weeks. We'll have that area done. We have not dredged the Pier 1 for the last 15 years or whenever, how long ever it was built. And the last bathymetric survey indicated that we needed to dredge it, yeah, just to make sure we satisfy the cruise lines in terms of the depth. When we go to cruise pier number 2, we have a bit of hard rock, bedrock. The cruise lines want a depth of 37 feet, and we are off maybe by, I think, I don't want to, we're off a little in terms of the work there. So we are going to dredge Pier 2 for the hard rock to make sure that when the bathymetric survey is done after dredging, we have the depth of 37 feet. We're not quite there yet, and that was the difficulty. But I can assure you that we're going to rectify that just now, because the monies have just been allocated to me yesterday, and so we have now engaged the persons who will do the work. They are right now, I think, in Antigua. So instead of them demobilizing and going back up to the US, they'll demobilize in Antigua, come here and do the work. It's not extensive work. It's work that would take maybe about, let's say, about 2 months to complete. And once that is done, we're going to be in good stead. We're also going to replace the fenders on Pier 1, because they're really in need of some repair work. So we're going to put some new fenders on Pier 1, also do that dredging. We are also going to dredge the cargo pier while they're here one time on. So we'll have over three berthing areas, the cargo area, and both piers dredged while we have the persons who will do that work here in our midst again. So really, we will come back to you. I'm certain we can come back to you by mid next year to tell you all the work has been done and completed. I know there are naysayers who say this and say that, but I can tell you, and my team is here and they can back me up. When we go to the cruise lines and we say, and we are very, let me say we're small, but we tell what they say, yeah? We are the only destination in this region that can take 3 Oasis class ships simultaneously. And that is no mean achievement. And so we want to make sure that when we dredge, we do the dredging come November, and we go back to the cruise line and say, we here, this is 37 feet, they're okay with it. They can come, you know. They can come with the depth, but they just want their particular depth, which we understand. And so if they're the ones who are going to bring the passengers and going to bring those huge ships, which are, you know, serious assets, we have to make sure that we do all in our power to make sure that when we say that it's okay to come, it's okay to come. And I should tell you, this is just only for the largest of the vessels. But we just want to make sure that there's no liability on our end at the end of the day when the ship comes. So that if something happens, we can say, well, hey, this is the latest bathymetric survey. We are at the depth that is required by you. We satisfy that depth. Because when we complete the dredging in a couple of months, we have to send back the particular bathymetric survey to the cruise line for them. We are doing some multi-beam testing right now to see how much we have to go down. But I think it's just 1 or 2 feet. Okay? But thanks for asking that question, and we put that matter to rest.
Along that same vein, go ahead. Can you please give the name of the company who will, the persons you spoke of in Antigua, who will demobilize and come back?
I don't know the name off the top of my head, sorry, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
And regarding the dredging and the bedrock, wouldn't the bedrock still be in place? After
what you mean?
What you just explained for the second cruise pier, the bedrock issue, and you said that it would be dredged and so forth. But wouldn't the bedrock still be in place even if the area is dredged, which means that the bedrock, which is the concern, would still be there?
Yeah, but that's not, the concern is not the bedrock. The concern is the height of the bedrock. So this is going to be basically shaved off, for want of a better word.
Okay.
It's going to be shaved off to the depth that they want. It's still going to be there, but not anything that will infringe their ships.
Okay.
Yeah?
Would that
It's not going to be taken out. You can't take out that bedrock. It's
exactly.
Serious. Right. You can't
would
take
that impact on the marine life in that area? Would that need an EIA?
Well, that's a question I can't answer. What I would say, however, is that for us to have that facility, one would have had to be done already. So it's all in keeping with what was there. This is not anything new, if you understand what I'm saying. This is not anything new. It would have been done already. But good question.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, and for those of you who've been listening through live stream on the social media platforms and on the radio, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and we wish you all a good day. Thank you.